and welcome back to another recording of the Content Marketing Studio. We are back for a second season to help you create better content faster. Today, I'm going to put the spotlight on my special guest to look at ways to build your brand and drive sales using podcasting. I am your host, Pascal Fintoni, and my guest today is the founder and director of Visualize You, Beth Hewitt. So, Beth, welcome to the Content Marketing Studio.
Thank you so much for having me on, Pascal. I'm really excited.
Well, thank you very much. So, I need to ask two important questions at this moment in time. Where are you and how are you doing?
As in, physically, am I in the world? I'm in my house like everybody else during the pandemic. I'm based in West Yorkshire, a little place called Liversedge in West Yorkshire. And what was the second part of that question, Pascal?
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Hmm.
I actually I've actually liked the pandemic from the point of view that it's allowed us to reset and regroup and think about the things that we want to do. So it's nice to get out there, but I'm also enjoying the downtime as well.
Excellent. So, Beth is a coach, trainer, and speaker specializing in helping you find the confidence to pivot and begin a new career or indeed start a new business. You're also the host of the Visualize You podcast, which is going to be the subject of today. And I love the way in which you managed to package this idea of pivot, package, promote, and profit from your skills and experience. So, that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Can I begin by asking you what came first? Was it the business idea or the podcast?
The business idea came first, definitely. Um, I've always been quite entrepreneurial and I've always done things, whether I've been in full-time employment, I've always had other things happening as well, whether it's blogging, creating content. So the business side was always there first, but I always had in the back of my head this idea that I'd like to start a podcast. And so when I finally left my corporate 9 to 5 last year, it became the time to bring those two together. So yeah.
And can we just explore before we move on to podcasting and obviously the business itself? I mean, I have to say, you very kindly on occasion shared, the build up towards it. I love the name, I love the graphics. If you don't have the chance to go on Beth's website, you must do so because I feel like you've captured everything that it means to you and to your customers so well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I did put a lot of thought and effort into kind of the structure and um, went through a bit of a process in terms of what it means for me because um, and we've had this conversation many times, Pascal, but I've been known for wearing different hats in different arenas, and so I really felt it was time for me to create a business that was not only about supporting other businesses or people wanting to start a business, but also was really in alignment with who I am as a person on a day-to-day basis, which I think we don't always do when we're busy running businesses for other people and doing other things. So yeah, a lot of thought went into the structure of Visualize
No,
You.
and it's paid off, and you're right. Although time would be against us to talk about your writing, I've known you primarily as a creative writer and blogger, and I was always impressed by how much you could come up with and the different way in which you would engage people. Did you find that maybe there was a link or correlation between your blogging activities and how you transfer some of those skills into podcasting?
I think so, yes. So I started out online as a blogger late 2000s to about 2009. So when I first started writing online. And so I built up my network around my blog back then and the connections that I made, and actually had another business called the Simple Blogging Network, where I supported businesses with their content side of things and would run challenges and things like that. So it's really served me in a sense of the connections that I've already got online, and it also served me in kind of understanding digital marketing and generating leads and that kind of thing as well. So the skills that I'm using today have kind of stemmed from that, but obviously things have moved on over the last 10 years. So um, yeah, it was a good grounding for what I'm doing today.
Super. So, can we go back then to the podcast
Yeah.
and when it was just an idea? So, what were the pre-launch, kind of activities? Did you log stuff into a dark room? Did you do some research? Did you have lots of whiteboard and post-it moments? How did you go about the design of the podcast before launch?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to start a podcast, and one of the things that was really important to me was actually doing it with other people. I didn't just want to do it in isolation because I know the power of a community. So one of the first things I did was kind of research what other people um, who'd already been through that process, but also to try and find a community of people who were about to start that same journey for me. And it was just by kind of happenstance, really, that somebody posted something in another community that I'm in of a course that was starting. It was an 8-week accelerator podcast program which ran through the summer. And so I thought, well, this is just meant to be. I jumped in that and just surrounded myself with other men and women who are looking to create a podcast. And that was the starting point, really, was that community element. So what I would say is that if you are thinking about doing this, you don't have to obviously do it that way. But if you are somebody who draws energy from other people and wanting to generate ideas and bounce things off there, that is an option for you to do as well.
I like that, because I think I had a similar conversation with another podcaster who started when I was at the same time as you, and he also kind of did convey this idea of the positive impact of being with others.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, nowadays we feel empowered to do things on our own a lot, but that's perhaps not always the best strategy moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was about 1,000 of us to begin with, and then we're down to about 100 now. People fall away, or it's not for them, kind of thing. And I've made some really lifelong friends out of that experience because we've all bonded as we've gone through the process of creating a podcast, which is a really nice thing to have, especially if you're launching and you're wanting um, other people to support you to launch, not just brainstorm ideas, but to actually, as you go through that launch period as well.
So did you have your own version of a lab or a bat cave where there was like things on the wall and post-its and whatever?
I do. So I have a summer house, which is at the top of the garden. But I soon realised it was okay for brainstorming and doodling and things like that. But it's not the best place to do podcasts because of the acoustics of people mowing the lawn or dogs barking or birds chirping. Although it might be nice for some podcasts. So I've brought myself indoors when I do the actual podcast interviews. But yes, I do have a back cave of a summer house of sorts.
Yeah, I think we spoke to each other once when you were there. But you're right. This business of working from home, there's a great deal of positives and convenience. But the amount of time I had to, either close my windows during the heat of the summer, or
Yeah.
to beg my neighbour to stop cutting the grass for an hour so I could have a webinar saying this. It's I'm not much of a gardener, Beth, so I can't understand why people cut the grass so much.
I know. Well, there's a field that's right next to me as well. So when somebody comes to cut the grass, it's quite a an upheaval. You really know that somebody's out there cutting the grass.
So can you take us through many of the decisions you've had to make about, I mean, I think the name, I think it's smart that you should choose, obviously, your brand. Why make it any harder? But what decisions did you take in terms of the artwork, in terms of the platforms, all those decisions that are very important to lead you to launch?
So with the artwork, it was really that the first thought is, do you have your face on there or not have your face on there? I'm not, I think people have mixed feelings about that, but I am the person behind the brand, and I thought it's really important actually that I am on there. So that was the first thing. Right, I made a decision that was going to happen. They said not to use a selfie, but it is a selfie essentially. But hopefully, it doesn't look too
Who's there?
unprofessional.
Who say this?
Well, people in the podcast community said
Ah,
that
right.
maybe you want to have at the end of the day, you want to have a professional image, don't you? So, but with the pandemic, it just didn't lend itself to getting some professional photographs taken. So, I had to use what I could create. So that's what I did.
Hmm.
Um, at the bottom of the artwork, I've got the four pillars of the pivot, package, promote, and profit. Now, I was umming and ahhing as to whether put those on or off, because you really have to think about when you're looking at the artwork on iTunes or on Pocket Casts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Actually, is that visible? Some of the squares are very small depending on where you are looking at them. But I decided to leave it on there because in some places it is enlarged, and I think it is something that runs throughout the whole of the business. So I've left it on there. But then in terms of the colours, I just wanted it to match my brand. and just keep it really clean. And I did, if you remember, Pascal, I did, as part of the lead up to the launch, and this was actually strategic, I did involve other people in that decision. I posted something on Facebook because I was really wanting to almost tease people a little bit around this is what's coming. And I wanted people to feel involved in that, so they would hopefully feel involved when the launch actually happened. So there was some method to my madness with that as
No,
well.
and to our viewers and listeners, I mean, I highly recommend that as a tactic. I thought it was superbly executed. In terms of, did you have to try different things, or forgive me, technical term here? Did you have to try different ways in which to record? Did you try different ways in which to publish until you settled on what you're using now?
So in terms of the recording, the decision really was between using Zoom or using like Skype, and then I think is it Ecamm? That's like an
Uh
additional
huh.
app that you need to record on Skype. The way that I work and the way that when I work with anybody is really through like the energy and bouncing off the body language. So it was really important to me that actually when I do the podcast interviews, I don't just want it to be audio. I want to actually see the person and be able to see what they're thinking and feeling and all that kind of things as well. So that's why I went with Skype. No, that's why I went with Zoom. And I just use, I've got a microphone. It's not an overly expensive one. It's a Snowball microphone, and just plug it into my laptop, and then I've just got like a webcam, so obviously we can see each other on Zoom. Um, have some headphones in when I'm recording, and that's pretty much it. It's not. I think people maybe feel overwhelmed that you need really expensive technology, and you can't. You get what you pay for essentially, but I don't think my audio is compromised by having a middle range kind of microphone or anything like that. So I haven't had any complaints so far anyway.
No, no, and I think in any kind of way, with this lockdown, even kind of professional radio broadcasters and users have had to get used to. So I
Hmm.
remember I listened to Steve Wright in the afternoon occasionally when I'm in between doing work stuff, and even he was working from home for a while, and he was saying, "Wow, the audio is." To my mind, rather poor, but I'm sure we're all going to get used to it. And I think that as long as it's audible and people can
Hmm.
understand what is being said, thing we've been used now to a whole range of. I mean, if you think about it, Beth, sometime we watch the BBC News and they have somebody on the rubbish kind of Skype call, can barely be seen and heard, and somehow it kind of works
Yeah.
because we've had to accommodate accordingly. What was it like to choose, the hosting publishing platform? What did you go for that?
So in the end, I went with Captivate FM, which I know you're familiar with, and I remember actually asking you what your thoughts were around using them as a host.
Uh-huh.
Um, I looked at um, I looked at a number of different ones. Buzzsprout was one. Libsyn was another one that I looked at. For me, it's always about like the usability and how intuitive it feels for me to use. So originally, I trialed Buzzsprout, and great company doing some really amazing things. But and the reason why I chose them originally was that it actually integrated with my editing software because I thought that might make it easier. But just the look and it just wasn't working for me in terms of using it. It didn't make sense in terms of the flow for me personally. And so that's when I got the trial for Captivate, and then it just made total sense. As soon as I started using that platform, I thought this is the platform for me. So that idea of needing to integrate with Descript, which is where I do my editing, which is an amazing platform, and we can talk about that a little bit
Hmm.
if you like. Um, that kind of went by the wayside because I thought Captivate are doing amazing things, and they're also partnering with things all the time. So it may be that Captivate maybe do integrate with Descript down the line. That was something that I was kind of willing to compromise on,
Yeah, we'll
and I
send a
absolutely
message
love
to the
them.
team at Captivate.
Thanks, Mark.
So, can I ask about the interviewing then?
Mhm.
What did it take for you to plan? I mean, did you know in advance? Did you plan in advance, the range of interviews, or was it a bit more natural and grew over time? How did you go about planning the interviewing?
I think there's a bit that comes before that, and that's in terms of how you've kind of got to know what your editorial hook is for the show. So that is kind of what is your topic. So for me, my topic was helping people to pivot in their business, or sharing those stories of people that have done that and how they've gone about that. But then it's almost like having a lens for the show as well. So in terms of what I am willing to talk about or not talk about, or what I'm interested in or passionate about. So for me, it's that in knowing that, that allows me to align up with the people that I interview, if that makes sense. Because I'm talking about people leaving their 9 to 5 to start a business. I'm not talking about, so for example, somebody might be made redundant. I'm not willing to talk about this kind of somebody who feels maybe like a victim, or, oh my goodness me, I'm in this horrible situation. That's not what the show is about. So I think it's getting really clear on what you will and will not talk about on the show, which then allowed me, when I'm looking for people to interview, to really understand where they're coming from and their story, and actually are they going to be a really good fit for the show. So that kind of came before reaching out to people.
And did you have to capture that in some ways? I'm wondering whether I interviewed recently a book author who said she wrote a proposal to herself. That makes any sense,
Uh-huh.
almost as though she was writing it for a publishing house. Did you find a way to capture that in some ways?
Yeah, so I essentially came up with like, it was almost like 10 commandments of these are the things that I want my listeners to feel, or what they're going to get out of it, what I'm going to get out of it, you know, what somebody will feel inspired to do as a result of that, and also what I will get out of it in the longer run, whether that's kind of book deals and kind of things. I kind of looked at the whole, and knowing me in terms of having a vision, that was just part of my process of having these things that I'm not willing to compromise on. These are the things that are definitely going to show up. So I made a list of those. And then, yeah, the topic, the lens, and kind of the voice. Do I want it to be funny? Do I want it to be informing? Do I want it to educate? Do I want it to inspire? And just really writing down what that would mean for listeners and for me. So yeah, I did go through a bit of a process around that.
No, but it's important to talk about it because it depends, the way in which someone is wired. Some people can spend a lot of time on the tech and the systemization, and others could spend a lot of time
Mm.
on the element. And I think they need to kind of strike the balance where possible, but also to document it. I always said to somebody, think of it as if you were to brief somebody else or delegate in good time. And I think that's important, as your business grows and maybe your podcasting activities grow, you may want to bring additional support, and to have that documentation early on is quite helpful.
It's essentially like the culture, isn't it? It's like your vision and values for a company, that you can look back on. So whenever you're employing somebody or whenever you're interviewing somebody, you know that it's in complete alignment. I also think it helps not to have this kind of I think it's called pod phase or something, where after like 7 episodes, people stop podcasting because they've run out of
Yeah, I've
ideas
heard that.
to
Yeah.
speak
Hmm.
to speak about anymore. Well, if you've got a clear, you know, lens for your show, you can't really run out, because you know what you want, and you know essentially where you might be able to find those people. So I think it really
Okay.
helps in the longer run.
So let's fast forward then, or in the case of our storytelling, but not for you because you already get way past the seven. That very first episode when you pressed record, what was that like? How did you feel?
It was such a whirlwind. So um, the first interview that I did was with a lady called Ananda de Jager, and I think she was based in Belgium, originally from Amsterdam. And her story was actually, I had a bit of that imposter syndrome, because she was a lady who'd gone through an eating disorder, who then started a business as a result of her experiences. And I, having never really worked with anybody who's had an eating disorder, I felt, am I actually qualified to do this in my very first interview? But I think you just have to kind of just get out there and do it. And actually, it was a really lovely experience. But one of the things that I always do is I plan out. So I'll do research. I'll think about the questions that I want to ask. I'll listen to maybe other podcast interviews that they've been on, because I don't want to ask the same things. I'll look at their website, look at them on LinkedIn, and it doesn't take an enormous amount of time, maybe 30 minutes or something, but that again will give you a good grounding for that interview. So I felt ready and prepared, but it was kind of, she she registered to do the interview on like the Wednesday, and we were recording it on the Friday. So it was such a fast turnaround, and it was my first one. But I think it went okay, and I'm really pleased actually that it was my first one, because I think because it was such an emotive and difficult subject, it allowed me to really put in that preparation, which I maybe would have not done to that degree had it been somebody who's just talking about, I don't know, SEO for the day, for example, or
Hmm.
something. So yeah.
What I have found as well is that those first few episodes are so important because this is when you discover your voice actually
Hmm.
rather quickly. I was quite surprised, you know. I mean, I can't remember now how many years ago I started, but I was surprised how quickly I realized, oh, this is a start, this is a show, this is the way it's done, and I've
Yeah,
remained true to it all those years later.
I totally agree with that. So I mean, I had a period of about 3 weeks where I think I'd done like 14 interviews, or maybe 14 interviews in 2 weeks. It was ridiculous. And when you do that, I mean, that's the fastest way to that crash course to learn how to be a podcast host. I think if you stagger it out, you probably wouldn't get the same experience. Um, but yeah, so that really helped me, like you say, find my voice and kind of fine tune the kind of questions that I ask, and just yeah, just how the flow of the show would work.
Super. So you mentioned editing earlier.
Yes.
Just out of interest for your particular series, what do you do in terms of audio editing?
So I use Descript, which is a very um, intuitive. It's based on AI, I think, as well, technology, where actually you just edit the words, not the audio, which was really, as a blogger and somebody who likes words, it's much easier for me to delete some words on a page than it is to actually go through and score on the audio where to take something out. Um,
So
so
sorry,
that's
can
what,
I ask? So essentially, you see the words as opposed
yes.
to the sound wave going up and down.
Yeah, so you upload your audio, and you click transcribe as part of that first initial piece of work that you do with the software. So then essentially the transcription is automatic within a couple of minutes, if that, it's there on the screen. And then you can edit the text, um, which essentially edits your audio. So it's really, I was like mind blown. I was like,
Wow.
what?
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing you can do, which is amazing, is you record, if you record some text using your voice, if you said the wrong word, so if I said um, dog instead of cat, I could delete the word dog, type the word cat, and it will use my artificial intelligence voice.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was like, what? So yeah, so that's what that does as well. And there's
So,
also
so
other,
you would borrow essentially the way you pronounce
uh-huh,
consonants and vowels,
yeah,
and recreate close as possible how you would say
yeah,
cats of dog. Hmm.
clever. So I haven't, I mean, there's so many features that I've not even looked at on that, but I certainly use things like it takes all the ums and ahs out, so you don't have to go through and take, it does that automatically in one click. Um, and just really easy to add kind of your intro and your outro and whatever you want to add.
Yeah. So how do you go about those intros and outros? What have you chosen as your own style?
So I have, well, I created a trailer as part of the launch
Hmm.
period, which I now essentially use as part of my intro, which was just me talking about what what the show is about, what people can expect from the show, and then I found some music to go with that. And that's essentially it's done once, and then obviously you can change it in the future if that's what you want to do. But just to make it easy for myself, it's a jingle that comes in at the beginning, and then I have an outro at the end as well, which at the minute is talking about people leaving reviews or signing up for the other courses and things that I have, and that kind of thing as well. So yeah, and then it's kind of once done, and then it's forever there until you change it.
Yeah, and it's nice to have those templates and systems.
Uh-huh.
You know, it makes such a difference. So here we are. You're now, a podcaster.
Uh-huh.
You got past. What did you call it? The pod phase. Is that what you called
I
it?
think it's called pod phase, and I'm sure that's what people call it. I think
Mm,
it's like burnout at episode 7.
right.
It's like the average that people think actually this isn't for me anymore.
Sure, and that's fair, by the way. I think people should understand that as part of my contribution to the world out there by interviewing people like you, it's also by self-awareness and discovery. And you give podcasting a go. It's not for you, move on. There'd be so many other form of expression for
Yeah.
you to use in your content marketing. So what else are you doing in terms of reach and distribution? So you got Captivate.fm, and
Hmm.
as you pointed out a moment ago, that's allowed you to be distributed onto some great platforms. Do you know
Hmm.
roughly where currently people can listen to your podcast?
So Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher. Have I said Spotify?
Yeah.
All the major ones. Plus, there's a lot of distribution, and a lot of my listeners at the minute come actually coming from India. I think I looked yesterday; it was like 12% of my listeners are coming from India. So that's a growing area as well that I just didn't uh, realize or imagine would be the case when I started out on this journey. And it's been listened to in 30, currently in 13 different countries and growing. So yeah, I think it's all on all the main platforms, and I keep pushing it out when I find new platforms that it's not
Mm.
currently on. So
I mean, that's one thing with my co-host Roger Edwards. You know, we run the Two Geeks and a Marketing podcast, and he's been a podcaster forever. I've been more of a videographer, stroke podcaster. So I'm discovering that this network and this distribution of audio-only content is so vast. It's
hmm.
actually it's almost like a strange game show where you have to discover countries and platforms that you didn't know existed or would have had an interest. And I think we're fortunate that the English language will travel. Far and
Yeah.
wide. In terms of so you go live, is distributed, but then do you do anything in terms of promotion and kind of reaching out?
Yeah, so this is kind of the where I'm at the minute in terms of how do you promote the podcast once you've done that. So um, I using Descript, I will create audiograms. So you can highlight kind of quotes or certain parts of your show that you would want to turn into an audiogram, which is essentially kind of a still image with words on the screen or a wave kind of image, which you can then share on wherever you want to share it on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So I do that, and I also do that for my guests. So I'll create a bit of a pack, and that's the other thing is actually a lot of some guests, and I'm not saying this about my particular guests, but I know speaking to other people that guests will come on your show to get some exposure for their own business, but then they won't necessarily share that work with their list, which is a little bit crazy, really, because at the end of the day, it's to benefit them as well as you. So I always come from the place as make it as easy as possible for your guests to share. So I create a bit of a pack of audiograms of some social media tiles in Canva. And then I send an email with kind of the links to where they can listen, leave a review, and do whatever they want to do basically with those. So hopefully that will help push it out further than just me pushing it out. I send it to my email list. Um, I try to stagger posts throughout the week. But what I'm finding as a new podcast, it's a little bit of a hamster wheel that I'm on. And so actually now I'm looking for like a VA to help me through that process, because clearly I want to be doing other things. And actually these are the tasks that actually would take somebody else not so much time, but actually would help me market the podcast by being a guest on other people's podcasts rather
Mm.
than me just sharing social media posts and things like that. So that's been a bit of a learning journey for me. But yeah, that's essentially what I do is try to push it out as far as I can, really.
And I think it's important, you know, back to this idea of systemization, because then you're in a position to delegate and
Hmm.
find that VA, which is, I think, a journey for all the content creators out there.
Yeah.
When it's something that you've memorized or you have a system that is kind of hit and miss, it's trickier, you know, to be able to delegate and pass on those instructions. I think the
Yeah.
idea of the promo pack, as I would call it, is great, because I think in general people will be keen to support, but they need to be given the tools to do so.
Yeah.
Um, have you found anything else that you come up with later? So, you know, you have the plans before you become a podcaster, but now you are. Have you come up with little tactics that are just recent for you?
In terms of content, or do you just mean?
You actually either, yeah, content or promotion of the content.
I mean, one of the things that has helped me um, monetize the podcast from the get go has been this idea of affiliates supporting me, and it came as a bit of a surprise, and it shouldn't have done, because when I was a blogger, that was how I essentially made my income, was from doing affiliate marketing and sharing the products and recommending things of other people. Um, so with the guests that are coming onto the show where they have a product or service, I'm essentially asking them up front, is this something that you would want to partner on and be an affiliate? I could be an affiliate for. And actually, episode 4 of the podcasts has generated, I've been selling jewelry for a guy who I interviewed, um, who left his job as an accountant to become a jewelry owner. And I've sold nearly £1,000 worth of jewelry since in the last 4 weeks. So that was something that I never would have expected to have happened. Um, but it's a nice addition, and it actually makes me think actually there's a lot of hope and ideas for actually how I can monetize the podcast
Mm.
in the
Well,
longer run.
go
So
on.
things like that if you can make your podcast almost like a growth engine for the business, um, from the get-go, think about the things that you could use the podcast to help you grow other aspects of your business, whether that is you might have an aspiration to be published author, or those kind of things. And I think having a podcast is quite interesting. When you say to somebody you've got a podcast, I think it's a conversation starter, and people are genuinely interested in what you're doing and things like that. So
Interestingly, I found that I think people appreciate actually, wow, that takes a lot of work. That
mhm,
but I also suggest again that you're curious about a number of things and you're prepared to investigate that. What I find interesting is, as much as in some circles people would say there's too many, blah blah blah. Actually, it's not. I mean, compared to the number of listeners, it's nowhere near the number of
mhm.
creators to create too much of an overwhelm compared to blogging, I would argue, or even video. But I find that if you say I'm a podcaster, you're going to get a very different reaction if you say I'm a YouTuber, for sure. So, by the way, no confusion with my audience and listeners. I am not a YouTuber. I am a video or visual storyteller, if you prefer. But so, in terms of the your virtual team at the moment, you've got Captivate.fm, you've got Descript, which I must look up. I'm so impressed with that.
Yeah.
You've got a Canva. Have you got any other kind of apps or platforms that almost become your extended, virtual team?
Yeah, so I use Acuity to help me schedule the interviews. And actually, you've been part of that process,
Yep.
so it'd be interesting to hear it from your side of things as well. But that really helps me kind of obviously get those dates in diary, but also send out a guest prep pack, so my guests know the questions in advance of what they're going to be asked, what they can expect, down to making sure you've got some headphones and you've brushed your hair because we may use the video content in the future, kind of thing. So that just takes the pressure off me sending a physical email. It's already ready to go. So that's been a massive help.
Actually, on that, what I found myself, over time is that as a host, you're hired to look after your guest.
Hmm.
Have you found a difference in terms of how you will run the session? Someone who may be a first time guest on a podcast, as opposed to someone who's been doing podcasting or even guesting for a while.
I don't, sorry, I didn't understand what the
So,
question was.
right.
Sorry, Pascal.
As a host, I was wondering whether you've discovered that you look after people differently, whether they are for the first time guest as opposed to someone who's been guesting for some years, let's say.
Um, I think, I mean, I've had feedback from people, the guests that I've had on the show, who say that it's been one of the slickest experiences for them. Where I don't know what their other experiences are, and I've not actually really guested on that many other podcasts to compare myself. But I think it just comes back to the idea of I want to make it as easy for them as possible. So I would treat everybody the same, whether it's somebody who's done lots of podcasts or who's uh, I want them to have a kind of a slick experience and just make them feel comfortable and know that they've got all the information to hand and they know what to expect. I don't really treat them differently unless they say to me, I'm really worried about this and I don't want to come on the show. I might kind of try to boost their confidence and say, you'll be absolutely fine. But essentially, I try to treat everybody the same.
No, that's excellent. So, listen, I think we've covered as much as I was looking forward to in terms of you as a podcaster. Can we change slightly? I can't let you go just yet without talking to you as the coach and everything that you've been building. So, would you be happy to share with us, where you are, what you understand with regard to pivoting, starting a new career, and starting maybe a new business at a time where one could argue is perhaps not the wisest of decision?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so anybody that doesn't know my story, my and actually, you didn't ask this right at the beginning of the interview, but a lot of the times when you go on these kind of shows, people will say, what did you do previously and how did you come to be doing the thing that you're doing today? And I actually find that difficult to answer because my journey and I've done so many different pivots and so many different career changes that that would be quite a long intro for anybody. So my whole my whole journey into starting this business has been based around uh, pivoting and kind of what I've learned through those many different experiences. And I think it's just really the timing just seems so right now that I'm able to now share those experiences with people who are having to make those changes because of the circumstances they find themselves in, whether it's pandemic or redundancies, furloughed, whatever it is. So it feels like it's all coming together for me, and now I can start to share those lessons that I've learned um, with other people. Um, for me, it's really about people really understanding their skills and experiences and actually how amazing they are as individuals, because I think we all too often do not raise ourselves up enough. We don't say how good we are at something because we're taught not to do it that way, taught to be humble, aren't we, and not do that. But actually we've all got so many amazing things to offer the world, and so I feel like my role and my job is really to help people see those in themselves and to feel confident to do that, and then take that step further if it was to start a business, to how do they actually want to show up online, how do they want to market themselves, what is their kind of platform of choice to get their message out there into the world. And because it you can't be on all platforms and be doing an amazing job.
Mm.
We need to really choose and fine tune what that means for us as individuals, and just get really good at doing that, and then just helping people on that journey really as they continue down that journey of starting a new business, or just pivoting in their careers and doing something completely different.
And how do you, because I suspect, the hint is in the name of the organization and the podcast. So what techniques are you happy to share that would help somebody visualize and use that as a way to obviously build that confidence and move forward?
So, I mean, one of the things that I've always had growing up has been I've always done creative visualization starting from when I was a really small child. Well, I did it by a complete accident when I manifested a bouncy castle. So for me, whenever you visualize something, it's about bringing all of the senses, the five senses, into what that is, and really thinking about the nitty gritty and the detail. So you might be surprised now, Pascal, when we talk about some of the things that I've worked on in the past. So when we've in with my previous hat on, where we've maybe had a large conference that we've had to fill, we've needed to have 200 people at a conference. Actually, every Sunday night, Pascal, I will be writing in my journal what that experience would be for somebody, to the nitty gritty, in terms of um, how many people will be there, what they would be experiencing, who will be on the stage, what it would visually look like, what they will be eating. I go into so much detail in terms of bringing those senses into that vision, and it's exactly the same for creating a new reality for yourself, and starting a new business and venture. You just have to assume that identity, and really step into those shoes of what that would mean. And sometimes that's hard to do if you've never done that, but actually, the more that you do it, the easier it gets. So you can, I mean, you hear people using vision boards. I tend to use like journaling and writing. As a writer, it's easy for me to write those kind of things down. So it's whatever really works for the person that I'm working with. But that is the first step, is kind of visualizing that, and then going into the detail of what that means using all the senses, but also intuitively. So if you're somebody who is intuitive, you might want to actually what that feels inside as well.
I must say, I've not heard that way, anyway,
Hmm.
expressed that way, this idea of using the senses to help
Hmm.
you. Because I think sometimes in business, we're asked to think it through, not
Yeah.
feel it through, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, goodness, you and I have done a fair share of it on business planning. And I mean, that usually just drains all kind of energy and whatever. Do you know what I mean? So, and I get it, someone has to see the black and white and the kind of very Cartesian way of running a business. But actually, particularly when a business would be done through human interaction, to think about what it's like for the other parties is going to be very, very important. Can we just ever so briefly explore journaling? I'm curious about
Yeah,
it
of course.
generally, and I think it would be of interest to our audience. So forgive me for asking, did you use that technique then for the podcast?
Yes, so I've been journaling about podcasts probably about 3 or 4 years. Seriously. um, I've been journaling since I was about, I don't know, 13. So back when I'm 13, I'm probably like, I wanted a New Kids on the Block album or something to turn up, for my birthday or something. But as I've used it for such a long period of time, sometimes when we talk about journaling, people think like you might have heard of like bullet journaling or
Uh-huh.
just reflecting on something. That's not what I mean. It's almost, well, I'll tell you what I do, and what I share with others to do as well is to select the 3 things each week that you are interested in and that you want to show up in your life. So that could be starting a podcast or generating some leads or getting a new kitchen, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be business. And then putting a heading and writing about that. But the step before that is actually giving gratitude. So to write down things that you're actually grateful for, because I'm a firm believer that the more things that you are grateful for, the more things that you can attract into your life to be grateful for. So mark down the things that you're interested in, but then list things to be grateful for, but then start to write out in great detail these aspects of what you want to show up, and doing it as if it's already in existence. So not this is what will happen when, actually as if it is here in front of you today, and just go into so much detail around that. And then I'll just revisit that every single Sunday. So Sunday at 10, it used to be 10 o'clock, but as children get older, they tend to not go to bed as early. So it might be 11 o'clock now. But I do it religiously every single week, and just revisiting kind of the visions and things that I want to show up. But I've used it for everything. So in my work, every event that we've done, Pascal, I've to the numbers and the food that we eat and everything. I've gone into so much detail, and I've manifested cars and kitchens and holidays and podcasts and all kinds of summer houses, all kinds of different things.
Well,
Um,
I did not know that, and I'm
yeah.
super impressed. But in a way, now that I get to know you more, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, yeah, excellent. So listen, our time together is nearly coming to an end. It's very, very sad, and I may have to invite you back to talk about other aspects of what you do. But before you go, I've got a bit of a fun quiz for you to
Oh
take
no.
part in. I know, and unlike what people would like me to do, I don't send the question in advance because I need really the answers to be very genuine. So
Okay.
if you were to have a Zoom call with a celebrity from maybe the business world or other, who would you like to have on the Zoom call with you?
Without a shadow of a doubt, David Lynch, director.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
So I was watching Twin Peaks in my bedroom when I was about 9 years old. My mum and dad had no idea, and I'm a massive Twin Peaks fan, and I just love his directing, the work that he does. He's obviously also into kind of meditation and things like that. So absolutely, I absolutely love him.
Right. Would you mind if that happens? Can I just be watching? I'll be one of those where I switch off the microphone and the video. I'll just be watching. But yeah, well,
Yeah.
we'll put the word out there and see what David can do for you. Next thing, you are essentially able to organize a private concert for you, family, and friends, an online concert, of course, via the wonders of Facebook Live. Who would be the band or the artist that would play for you and your
Oh,
family?
that's hard. I'm not sure. Like my music taste is so wide.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, it'd be some kind of rock 80s band or something. Or Fleetwood Mac, or I don't know,
yeah.
just it'd be so varied. Um, it wouldn't be anyone really modern. I don't. I think I tend to like the 70s and 80s and easy listening and rock and all kinds of things. So something from that
That's absolutely
arena.
fine. Now, you can't have a concert, online concert, without some good food. So, if you could order a meal for you and your family to watch the concert, what would you order?
I don't know. We all like different things, so it would be quite difficult. It'd have to be a
Yeah,
buffet or something.
that's
Um,
it.
yeah, I like curries, and Leah likes pizzas, and I don't know. It would be
That's
a
been
mix.
the
It
ultimate
would be a
buffet.
mixture. It would be definitely a brown buffet, probably.
Next one, you've been invited to host your own radio show, do you believe?
Oh.
So, what would the show be about, and who would be your co-host?
Hmm. That's difficult. When you just started a podcast, it's difficult to think of what your new show would be. But it would be lovely if you remember Dawn Lightwood, who I used to work with, who you used to work
Oh
with.
yeah.
It would be lovely to have Dawn as my co-host.
Oh my
Um,
world, that'd be
a-
so good.
and I'm not sure what we would talk about. It would just be ramblings of something. But definitely, it would definitely be Dawn as my co-host. Absolutely.
Super. I'll be
Um,
the number one fan then. Should you guys do that?
I'll let you know when I know what the show would be called.
Super. And listen, what is happening to all of us will at some stage be behind us. So if you could organize a trip for you and your family, where would you go?
I just want to travel the whole world. I wouldn't want to go to one place. I've had in my head and in my journal, as you would imagine, that I'm going backpacking when I'm in my 80s. But it would be nice to go visit some places before I'm going backpacking in my 80s. So I just want to see the world. I just want to go to as many different places and experience as many different cultures and things. So it would have to be like a world tour, maybe.
Excellent. But do that to make sure you record the podcast or the video version of that. Listen, Beth, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Content Marketing Studio. I have no doubt that our viewers and listeners will have more questions for you. What is the best way to get hold of you, contact you, or even look at listen to your podcast and read your blog?
Yeah, so you can go to bethhewitt.com or visualizeyou.com. You can access the podcast in both of those places. I've got blog posts there, and just reach out to me. You can find me on all social media platforms with Visualize You.
Once again, thank you very much for taking part in this mini series on Meet the Podcasters. To you, our viewers and listeners, a big thank you for your support. You know what to do. Subscribe, leave comments, and make suggestions about what you'd like me to cover to help you create better online content faster. Until next time, go out there and make sure you look after your audience. Bye for now.